Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Work From Home Show. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. Naresh, Adam's unable to join us today, but we have Kate Andersen Brower on the show. She is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Residence, Inside the Private World of the White House, as well as The First Women, The Grace and Power of America's Modern First Ladies, and the new book, Elizabeth Taylor, The Grit and Glamour of an Icon. Kate Andersen Brower has covered the White House for Bloomberg News during President Obama's first term. And before that, she worked at CBS News and Fox News as a producer. She is also a CNN contributor and has written for the New York Times, Vanity Fair, the Washington Post, and many other publications. Kate Andersen Brower, thank you so much for joining us on the Work From Home Show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Looking forward to the discussion, especially because you are a #1 New York Times bestselling author. Your books have sold so well. Can you walk us through how you got into writing books? I did say that you started your career at Fox News, CBS News, but even before that, what got you interested in writing, especially political and historical writing?
Well, I studied political science at Barnard, and that I got a master's in history from Oxford, and I've just always been interested in politics and personalities, and I love reading biographies. But honestly, I'm more of a fan of fiction on a personal level. I read a lot of fiction. And so I thought that some biographies can be kind of stilted and not as easy to grasp. And I think that what I tried to do with The Residence and my book, First Women, and then this book about Elizabeth Taylor is make these very famous iconic people into actual three-dimensional people. You know, we tend to put presidents, first ladies, and major celebrities on these platforms, and as though we can never really know them. And I think that, you know, they are just human beings like the rest of us, and they have their pitfalls and their struggles, and I think we can learn something from them. And so that's what I try to do. And then also it's just entertaining to learn history through the eyes of people on the sidelines of it. I mean, that's what The Residence is. It's about the housekeepers and the butlers and the people backstage at the White House. It's not, you know, it's not told from the perspective of the presidents and the first ladies. It's told from kind of the backstairs of the White House, which I think is really interesting because they have this vantage point that's very different from a very intimate vantage point, but it's also very different from what the American public gets to see of these presidents that are everything we see in press conferences and statements. It's very thought out and planned, and we don't get to see them in their private moments. So that's what I tried to do with those books. And then Elizabeth is just a fascinating person, and so I was really excited to get to write about her.
So how you said you went to Barnard and you went to Oxford. How did you get your feet in the door? Because your books are very well sourced. So like, how did you start? Was Fox News your first job out of school, or where did you start, and how did you work your way up?
My first job out of school was actually at CBS at the early show, and it was in 2003. And I interviewed with them, and it was funny because it was in New York, and I asked the woman who was hiring me, who was a producer on the show. She said, I asked her what, I should wear, like what the dress code was. And she said, "Oh, honey, you're going to be working from midnight the overnight shift. No one's going to care what you wear. So I didn't even realize that they had hired me for midnight to 10 a.m. And I was basically by myself, stuffing mailboxes for the producers, printing out scripts for the anchors, making sure that if there was anything that crossed on the wire that was really important, I would call and wake up the senior producer. I mean, it was a really tough job because it was a lonely job because I was by myself. And then I would leave when the other producers would come into the office. And then I did that for about a year, and the overnights are really hard to take. So I ended up then getting a job at Fox in DC, and that I just really blindly sent my resume in, and they were looking for bookers. And so I was a booker. I moved from New York to DC, and I would call, we had these thick sheets of pamphlets, and it was like the War on Terror. This was back in 2005, 2006. And, if there was a bombing somewhere, you would have a list of generals you were supposed to call. And there were certain people who were banned and others who were okay. And it was just a very kind of strange experience. And then I just wasn't so happy with the situation there. So then I left. I got a job at Bloomberg, and that was when I really was able to do reporting. And I asked if I could go and, they have White House correspondents. Bloomberg is one of the three wire services. And so there's the AP, Reuters, and Bloomberg. And they needed people who could work on the weekends. And this is before we had kids. And so I just said, can I go and watch the helicopter take off on the south lawn of the White House? Or do you need somebody to sit in a pool van, they call it, and it's body watch basically. So if the president, it was the end of President George W. Bush's time in the White House, and when he would go bike riding, they would have vans go out to the military base where he would ride, and they just needed reporters to literally sit in the van and make sure that nothing bad happened, like he didn't break his leg or anything. So it was that kind of thing. And then after that, I started actually reporting and getting sources. And so it took several years to get comfortable and to the point where I could go out on my own. And it is actually, my husband worked with, he was doing some teaching at Georgetown, and he ran into somebody who was a book agent, and he said, well, I had this book idea, and he said, well, why don't you meet him for coffee and float it by him? He's a great guy. And I did, and that's how the book came about, because I had the support of this book agent who thought it was a great idea. The residents, he thought it was a unique idea. So just having somebody who believes in you in that world is really important.
So I want to talk a little bit about your sourcing, because you did explain a bit about how you got to Bloomberg and then basically went out on your own. But now you don't work. I believe you don't work for any one publication full time.
Mm-hmm.
You write a little bit for the New York Times, Vanity Fair, a few other networks. But how do you continue to source? Are you credentialed? Do you attend press conferences? Do you network? Like, to get access to White House butlers, for example, like, how do you find sources for that? Like, how did you get access to the White House?
That was not through the White House at all. It was actually helpful at the time that I was on maternity leave. I was with our first son, and I literally just Googled stories about White House butlers and housekeepers, and the White House Historical Association has done some great work on it. And so I came across a name of Christine Limerick, and she was the head housekeeper during the Clintons and the Bushes. And I looked her up in the, on the white pages online, and called her at her house in Delaware and asked her if I could come and visit her. And, she was a little bit reticent at first, but then I came out and met her in person, and she was just lovely, and we started talking, and then she put me in touch with other people. And I think that's the thing. If you get one person who trusts you, they will then say, vouch for you with other people. So that wasn't important. And I had not written a book at that point. I was at Bloomberg still, but I was basically leaving that job because I just couldn't do it with our having a kid because it was too time, like I would never see our son. So I don't think you need to necessarily have an organization behind you. You just need to have yourself and your belief in yourself to get something done.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true. And you did most of this while on maternity leave, raising your kid, your children. So you were basically at home, working from home.
Yeah, I was at home. We didn't even have a babysitter or anything. It was my husband was working full time, and I decided to leave my job because we just made the decision that it would be better to, cut some corners here and there if we needed to financially in order to spend time have somebody home with our kids. And so, but I knew that I wasn't the kind of person. I couldn't be completely fulfilled if I didn't also have something outside of that. And so, we did find a babysitter who came like 3 days a week. And then the good thing about that was because we didn't really have the money to have a full-time nanny and I didn't really want that at the time, it really made me focus. Those 3 days when she was there from like, I think it was like 10 to 3 or something, I was full on working. And we had a small apartment in Washington, D.C., and I would just lock the door of our bedroom and make phone calls and do reporting and writing and everything because like I think the great thing about working parents is that you have this finite amount of time that you can get something done. And so the plus of that is like you feel this immense pressure to get it done. If I have a lot of time, it's Murphy's Law or whatever it is, then I'll take forever to do something. But when you have 3 or 4 hours in a day and you say, that this is all you can do, I just really buckled down in that time period. And I think a lot of working parents and families feel that way. It's unfortunate in some ways because you can't really mull things over the way you might like to, but you have this period of time to get it done and you just hunker down and do it.
We talk about this topic a lot, obviously. We're the work from home show, and I'm the exact same way. I have two very young children. I have a 3-year-old and or a two, let's just say a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old. So when our first one, before we didn't just send him off to daycare immediately. I was like, you know what, I work from home. I'm gonna stay at home with him, but to get work done, because I run 2 small businesses online. To get work done, like you said, you only have a fixed amount of time during the day. And so, similar to you, I hired a part-time nanny who came 2 to 3 days a week for only probably 3 to 4 hours each day. So let's just say about 10 hours a week. So during those 10 hours, that was my time to really get in front of my computer, I'm an author as well, to write, to knock out my meetings, to do client work, to take care of whatever work that needed to be done. So you and I have a very, very similar mindset as far as, we're not just going to we're not just going to stay at home and take it. In fact, that can get super boring without my work.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have done, being stuck with at the time, a 1-year-old. Like there's not a lot that we have in common. So my work really saved my sanity. And then, of course, you spend a lot of time with a child, which is great, but I got a lot done. There was no drop off in productivity, no drop off in revenue. In fact, I'd say things only continue to improve. And then we had a second child and the cycle is repeating itself. And once they're gone, the older one's in daycare now. Once both of them are off to daycare or to school, you only have a fixed amount of time. It's about a 5-year window where you have with a child at home. And once they're off at school, like that's your day completely opens up and your life almost changes because it's like, whoa, I was just taking care of a kid and taking these 3 hours, 4 hours seriously every day. And now, like you said, I have like all the time in the world now that they're away from the house.
Yeah, it's you realize how quickly that time goes, because we have a now a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old, and our 10-year-old who was, that was when I started writing, and it's like that time went so fast because now they're in school and they also have sports after school, but when they get older, you still need to be there to shuttle them to their different things, different activities and everything. And I think having that culture of being able to work from home and hopefully that flexibility, it just is something that, could be one of the very few positives that we can take from the pandemic. And I know that that's something you're highlighting, but I really feel strongly that it's just opens up the world because you can waste a lot of time, especially commuting and doing things that aren't, that aren't helping your actual productivity. Like you said, like if you just can hunker down and get the work done, um, that's the important thing. Whether it's in an office or at home doesn't matter.
I believe maybe you can explain a little bit more. Your books, which have done extremely well, have any of them been turned into a movie or docuseries, or they're in the process of being done?
Yeah, The Residence is being turned into a series for Netflix.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and Shonda Rhimes' production company is doing it. It's a murder mystery, so it's basically just using the book as inspiration. They say as a jumping off point for the series. That um, I don't know how far along they are with it. To be honest, I think she does everything really well, so it'll be really exciting to see. And so that's exciting. And then I've had a lot of interest in the Elizabeth Taylor book, but it's documentaries. And unfortunately, I worked with the Elizabeth Taylor trustees, and they already sold the documentary rights of the book to J.J. Abrams' production company before I came
Oh,
along.
wow.
So yeah, which is amazing, but it doesn't involve the book or me. So it's great. But so we can't, unfortunately, sell the documentary rights. But her life story is so dramatic and interesting. I'm hoping that maybe dramatic rights might be something people are interested in at some point. But yeah, I mean, that's another avenue, I think, for books. As an author, you hope if something gets done, but I never trust anything until it's actually, you know, on on the screen, because I think in LA and Hollywood, all those things just involve so many moving parts, and you just hope that something works out. But it is really exciting because I'm a huge Shonda Rhimes and Netflix fan, so that will be very interesting to see.
That's really exciting. Uh, what I guess you mentioned that you have a little bit of experience in the documentary side or translating book to, is it nonfiction that they're coming out with? Are there going to be actors, or is it all just documentary style?
Oh, you mean The Residence?
Yes,
Or
yes, The Residents.
oh no, it's all drama. It's like a total dramatization of.
Oh, so you have actual actors and actresses.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
not a
that's exciting.
documentary at
So,
all.
so,
So
so, so
yeah.
you're not going to be, you might just make a cameo or something.
Oh,
You're,
I don't think I'll be in it at all. No, no. They're just taking it and like using the book as a inspiration for a story about the White House and a murder mystery, like a murder that takes place in the White House. I don't know anything beyond that because I haven't seen the scripts, but
oh, that's
I,
pretty cool.
yeah, it's really cool. I think it'll be great.
And there was a movie that came out. I think it was called The Butler. I want to
Yes.
say. So
Yes.
you had nothing to do with yours. Is completely separate from. I think that was also based on a book, if I'm not mistaken.
It was. Yeah, it's funny. That came out right when I started working on my book, The Residence, and I didn't even know anything about it. Um, it's based on a really short book that was written about the life of a butler, and it's a great film, but it had nothing to do with my book, and that film more closely tells the story of a White House butler, because there's a lot about, race, for instance, because a lot of the butlers who I interviewed, are Black. And, what it was like for them serving these white presidents during segregation, and, the bonds that they had and the sort of influence that they had over some of these presidents. I mean, Lyndon Johnson was very close with his cook, who was an African American woman who, talked to him about what it was like not being able to stay at the same hotels that they did when they were down. She would drive with Lady Bird Johnson from Washington, D.C. to Texas, and they couldn't, go into the same restaurants or sleep at the same hotels. And Lady Bird was upset by this, obviously. And so it's those kind of firsthand experiences that informed the civil rights legislation that Lyndon Johnson pushed through Congress. So, I mean, it's really interesting to see how those personal relationships influence policy.
Kate Andersen Brower, thank you so much for joining us on the Work From Home show. It's been a phenomenal interview. I've learned a lot. I think you have a lot of exciting things going on. Check out all of her books on Amazon. Her latest one is Elizabeth Taylor, The Grit and Glamour of an Icon. You can also get The Residents and First Women on Amazon as well. The website is katebrower.com. That's BROWER. BROWER, katebrower.com. Kate, any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners or anything else you want to promote?
Oh, no. I mean, I think what you're doing is great. I think it can be very isolating working from home, I know. So I think it's nice to have a community of people who are in it together and know that there's a huge group of people and a community of people working from home and doing things in this new innovative way. And I think it's really important for mental health, and also just for families, and to know that you can have that flexibility. So I think it's a wonderful thing.
It is a wonderful thing for sure. And I'm excited to watch the Netflix drama. So when that comes out, it sounds really interesting. And I'll be sure to tell my friends and share this interview as well, because this interview will be published. So congratulations on that. Super exciting. To all our listeners, check us out at workfromhomeshow.com. That's www.workfromhomeshow.com. Get on our mailing list there. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, a few other platforms. Leave us a review on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, whatever podcasting platform you utilize. And until next week, keep on working from home.